Late November is a weird time for horror. Jack-o'-lanterns are collapsing in the yard, Christmas lights are half hung, and the genre is busy sneaking in some of its strangest, moodiest releases, while everybody else is thinking about turkeys and shopping. This week in horror history, we're pitching our tent at the edge of the holidays, a summer camp shocker with an all-timer twist, a gothic decapitation fest from Tim Burton, a supermarket siege full of cosmic despair, and a small Maine town that quietly grew fangs on network television. If you like your comfort movies with a side of existential dread, well, you're in the right place. This week in horror history, for the week of November 18th through 25th, I'm Enrique Couto, your tour guide through the anniversaries, oddities, and deep cuts that built the creepy calendar we live by. On today's tour, we'll mark the theatrical birthday of Sleepaway Camp, revisit Sleepy Hollow's fog-drenched Headless Horseman, and watch The Mist roll into theaters. Then we'll talk about a cult classic launch title that turned the Xbox 360 into a crime scene simulator. And after the break, we'll dive into Tobe Hooper's Salem's Lot, the miniseries that made an entire generation afraid of their own bedroom windows. November 18th, 1983, Sleepaway Camp slashes its way into theaters. New York audiences get first blood as Robert Hiltzick's low-budget slasher Sleepaway Camp opens and tries to ride the post-Friday the 13th wave, which was riding the post-Halloween wave. On paper, it's another camp set body count movie. In practice, it leans into grubby detail and one of the most infamous final shots in horror history, and if you don't know, you need to find out. It crawled onto VHS, then into Midnight Movie canon, and now it's a staple of the "wait, you've never seen this?" lists and debates. And I want to say, I went into Sleepaway Camp completely and utterly blind. I had heard like crazy, this is going to set my age a bit, on MySpace about how awesome this box set for Sleepaway Camp was. I'd never heard of the movies beyond seeing the box covers in video stores. So I went out and bought the Sleepaway Camp Survival Kit, which was a 3-disc set from Anchor Bay. It was awesome, had lots of extras, and it came in a box that looked like a first aid kit. And actually that initial box got recalled because they used a Red Cross on it. And ironically enough, the Red Cross filed a cease and desist because I guess they own that iconography. But I had no idea what I was in for. And not only was Sleepaway Camp 1 pretty freaking awesome, but I am a massive supporter of the sequels as well. If you want to revisit or finally witness that ending, it's free with Prime right now on Amazon, or you can watch it on Peacock with a subscription, or you can see it completely and utterly free on places like Tubi, Plex, and Pluto TV, at least as of the recording of this show. There's no 4K release of the original yet on physical media, so you'll have to stick to a standard Blu-ray. But I've been enjoying very much my 4K UHD copies of the sequels. November 19th, 1999, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow gallops into cinemas. Paramount drops Sleepy Hollow in the pre-Thanksgiving slot, giving Tim Burton the keys to Washington Irving's Headless Horseman and letting him shoot a Hammer horror love letter on a studio budget. The result is fog and blood and more severed heads than you can shake a stick at, although I don't know why you'd want to. Anchored by Johnny Depp playing Ichabod Crane as a fussy proto-forensic nerd. And actually, while it does borrow a lot from Hammer horror films, I think it borrows even more, at least in the depiction of Ichabod Crane, from 1985's Fright Night, directed by Tom Holland, not Spider-Man. The Child's Play Tom Holland. A vampire film I have a great deal of fondness for because there's a character in there named Peter Vincent who is a vampire hunter in movies and hosts horror movies on television, who ends up becoming a real-life vampire hunter, albeit very, very reluctantly. And a lot of his mannerisms and reaction to the situation really, I think Depp, at the very least, watched Fright Night a couple of times, had a blockbuster night and got some inspiration. If you're in the mood for autumn vibes long after Halloween ends, it's free on Pluto TV, or you can rent or buy it digitally on the usual suspects like Prime Video, Apple TV, or you could even spin that long-standing Paramount Blu-ray. I'm due for a revisit of Sleepy Hollow. Hey Dave, if you're listening, bring it over. November 21st, 2007. The Mist blankets theaters. Boy, talk about another shock ending. Frank Darabont, the guy who turned The Shawshank Redemption into a comfort movie, adapts Stephen King's novella, The Mist, and delivers pure despair. Darabont would later go on to massive success as one of the showrunners for the long-running Walking Dead. The film follows a Maine supermarket full of ordinary people in a kind of Lovecraftian fog, then watches their fear mutate into religion, mob rule, and one of the bleakest endings in mainstream horror, if not all the way through the genre. It didn't blow the doors off the box office, but its reputation has only grown, especially in light of that gut punch final scene. Currently, you can stream The Mist on platforms like Peacock and Paramount Plus, or grab the Blu-ray that includes Darabont's preferred black and white cut that makes it feel like a lost 1950s horror movie. November 22nd, 2005. Condemned: Criminal Origins launches with Xbox 360. When Microsoft rolls out the Xbox 360, one of its launch titles is a filthy little first-person horror game from Monolith called Condemned: Criminal Origins. You play an FBI investigator chasing a serial killer through rotting apartments, abandoned malls, and subway tunnels, doing more forensic work with a lead pipe than with a lab. Its focus on melee combat, forensic puzzles, and sheer grime made it a cult classic and a formative, I really shouldn't be playing this at 2 a.m. experience. Physical copies still trade hands, but in a very 2025 twist, the game has been delisted from major digital storefronts, sparking rumors and wishful thinking about a possible remaster. I want to take a quick moment to thank Savorista Coffee for sponsoring this episode of This Week in Horror History. If you love the bold flavor of coffee, but sometimes you just can't handle another cup after 10 p.m. while you're binge-watching the entire 4K collection of Nightmare on Elm Street, well, Savorista has you covered. If you head to Savorista.com, you'll see all kinds of decaf and half-calf blends that taste premium, but with a whole lot less caffeine, so the jitters you get will only be from the man with razor knives who haunts your dreams. You can head to Savorista.com and use promo code SPOOKY at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your order. And every purchase supports our program directly, so head to Savorista.com, use promo code SPOOKY at checkout, get your discount, and support the show. Huge thank you to Savorista.com for their support. After the break, we're driving up to Salem's Lot, where the real estate is cheap and the vampires, well, they're plentiful. Now that we're back, let's talk about a mini-series that permanently ruined the idea of looking out your bedroom window at night, especially if you live on the second floor. Our deep-cut spotlight this week lands on Salem's Lot, the 1979 CBS miniseries that proved you could sneak genuinely terrifying vampire horror onto network television. For those uninitiated, there were several very famous examples of TV-made horror films in the 70s that emotionally and psychologically scarred an entire generation. Dark Night of the Scarecrow comes to mind. That might have been the early 80s. And another one that's really famous is the Trilogy of Terror. Basically anything Dan Curtis touched, it turned to gold if you're a psychiatrist. Directed by Tobe Hooper, who had directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre just a few years earlier, and based on Stephen King's 1975 novel, it aired over 2 nights, November 17th and 24th, which puts the second half squarely in This Week in Horror History. Instead of a suave, talkative Dracula type, Hooper and company gave us Kurt Barlow as a chalk-skinned, rat-toothed Nosferatu who never speaks, just hisses and lunges out of the dark. And don't get me started on the eyes. The contact lenses were mortifying even before you remember that this is the 70s, so those lenses in his eyes were made of glass. The setup is simple. Writer Ben Mears returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot to work through a childhood trauma involving the creepy Marston house on the hill, only to find that a mysterious antiques dealer and his unseen partner have moved in, and the locals are starting to look a little pale, even for New England. What makes Salem's Lot special isn't just the plot, but the way it weaponizes everyday small-town life. Gossiping, neighbors, bored kids, a local priest, all slowly swallowed by an infection nobody wants to name. Visually, it's pure late 70s comfort horror. Paneled walls, boxy cars, blue-tinted night. But Hooper keeps dropping images that feel like urban legends come to life. The often-referenced Glick boy tapping on the window, the corpse that sits up on the morgue table, that antler impalement at the Marston house. It's no wonder later creators of vampire stories, from the aforementioned Fright Night to Buffy to Midnight Mass, have cited Salem's Lot as a major influence. If you've only ever heard about it, well, we have some moderately good news. It's still available, but you'll have to rent it on your preferred service like Prime Video, Apple TV, wherever you rent your movies. There's also a very solid Blu-ray edition in circulation. I have it, and it's pretty cool. It is a very long movie. They put them together instead of presenting it as a mini-series, although it feels like a 2-part mini-series. I guess that... Okay, I'll shut up. That is a very mini-series, I suppose. But heed my suggestion. Maybe don't watch it right before bed, especially if your bedroom window doesn't have curtains made of garlic and holy water. Okay, I don't know how you'd make curtains out of holy water, but, I mean, science has come a long way since 79, right? Right? Let's light some candles, black ones obviously, for this week's birthday roll. November 18th, 1962, Kirk Hammett is born. Metallica's lead guitarist is also one of the world's most famous classic horror collectors, with a museum-worthy stash of posters and props, and the coffee table book Too Much Horror Business to prove it. November 19th, 1962, Jodie Foster was born, an all-time great who gave us one of horror's most iconic final girls as Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs. Also, I want to mention, this is one of those examples, a very early, perfect example of a film being a horror movie, but then people trying to kind of scoot it under the rug as, oh, well, it's a thriller. Well, sure, it's a thriller, but It has a guy biting somebody's nose off. I think it's a horror movie, so just hand over the Oscar and let's stop arguing about semantics. Yes, I'm aware I'm in a room alone. November 20th, 1948, Richard Mazer. Genre fans know him as Clark, the dog handler in John Carpenter's The Thing, and as an adult Stan Uris in the 1990 It miniseries. And I can't wait to talk about The Thing when the time comes. For our then and now, we're raising a glass, or maybe a lightning rod, to Frankenstein. On November 21st, 1931, Universal officially released James Whale's Frankenstein in the United States, cementing Boris Karloff's flat-topped creature, and of course this moment.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I want to mention, when I was trying to find that sound effect for the show, everything I found was from Young Frankenstein and not the original, so that goes to show you how iconic moments can morph and evolve in the zeitgeist, I guess. It's only 70 minutes long, but between the lab equipment, the little girl at the lake, and the burning windmill, it pretty much wrote the visual language of mad scientist horror as it would come to be known. Fast forward to right now, and Frankenstein is back in the conversation thanks to Guillermo del Toro's new adaptation, rolling out theatrically in the fall and hitting Netflix in early November. It's actually available right now, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it yet. Del Toro is leaning closer to Mary Shelley's novel, but he's also openly paying homage to the 1931 film that first terrified him as a kid. It's a pretty cool full-circle moment. 90-plus years after that original November release, the same stitched-together myth is still being jolted back to life for a new generation. And of course, as we wrap up this week's episode, I have to give you my weekly recommendation, and this one's a little more recent. It's Bones and All from 2022. Luca Guadagnino's melancholy cannibal road movie, which opened wide in the U.S. on November 18, 2022, is set against the wide-open Midwest in the 1980s. It follows two young eaters, as they become known, who bond over a shared urge to consume people and hit the road in search of family, belonging, and maybe a way to live with the hunger. It's a slow burn, part doomed romance, part Americana travelogue, actually filmed not far from where I live, but it's also part absolutely gnarly body horror when it wants to be. Taylor Russell and Timothée Chalamet sell the tragedy. Mark Rylance steals scenes as a deeply unsettling older eater, and the whole thing feels like a Thanksgiving movie from a parallel universe, one you don't want to visit. As of this recording, it's available with subscription on Prime Video and also cinephile-focused streamer Mubi. So it's an easy one to add to a chilly night double feature. I also want to mention I saw Luca Guadagnino's most recent film, After the Hunt, which is not a horror movie, but my goodness gracious, it was excellent. I enjoyed the hell out of it. And that, my spookies, was This Week in Horror History for November 18th through 25th. If you enjoyed our little stroll through slashers, fog monsters, and small-town vampire plagues, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. We drop these every single Tuesday. And we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. And while you're doing favors for me, why not also leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to let other spookies know they're in the right place. Also, tomorrow, right here on the feed, we'll have a brand new story from Michael Kelso, and it's a creepy one, so make sure you're back here tomorrow for Weekly Spooky. And, by the way, on Friday, we're dropping a massive story compilation. Thanksgiving horrors you will not want to miss. Until then, keep your windows latched, your tapes rewound, and your calendar marked. And remember, our days are numbered. That's how we tell them apart. Now back to trying to make a curtain out of holy water.